Thank you, Paul, very much. I appreciate it.
All right, I'd like to call to order the public session of this regular meeting of the Board of Education for December 7th, 2021. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we start with the Student Council report. Megan Spencer.
Hello, how are you? So starting off with the counseling office, last week's junior college night over Zoom went well. It was an informative keynote address on the state of the college admissions and was followed by several workshops which parents and students selected. These sessions were recorded and will be available later this week on the guidance and counseling webpage. Counselors have completed the individual 9th grade meetings and are now joining the full mental health team to deliver lessons to all 9th grade classes on mental health and self-care. Parents and guardians are encouraged to review the materials that accompany this presentation on the guidance and counseling webpage and continue this important conversation about mental health at home. Student Council is hosting a lunch tomorrow from 11 to 1 for all veterans in the community. We have veterans who served as recently as 6 months ago and veterans from World War II. On Thursday, December 16th, the orchestral and choral concert at Mr. Somers is taking place on the 17th. The alumni dialogue, which is the recent graduates speak to our current seniors about their college experiences, will also take place on the 17th. Student Senate meetings on November 23rd and December 8th focus on key issues impacting student experiences here at the high school. And finally, from the 15th to 22nd is Spirit Week. This Winter Spirit Week days are Pajama Day, Flannel Day, New Year's Eve attire, anything but a backpack, which as it sounds, you bring your books to school in anything but a backpack, Winter Gear Day, and Ugly Sweater Day. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Thank you very much.
All right, next item is a public comment specifically on agenda items. On the agenda tonight, there's an operations update, preliminary budget preview, school calendar draft, and some policies and business items. Is there any public comment on those particular agenda items? Okay, so moving on. Next is student recognitions.
All right, so we've got Mr. Catalini here this evening. You see we have a number of our coaches, a number of our student athletes here tonight. So again, as we get started, hopefully folks know we had an extremely successful fall season across our sports, both on the field of competition as well as academically. So Mr. Catalino, go ahead and walk us through that. So thank you, sir.
Thank you. So what we're going to do here is I'm just going to have, I have a lot of our captains and our coaches here. So when I call you up, I'm just going to read a little something about your group, your accomplishments, and then if you would come up, just stand here for a second, and then you can just kind of go across. We'll stay with the COVID protocols, and you can wave to the board, and you can head right out that, right? So that'll be good. So our varsity field hockey coaches were Amy Magaletti and Chrissy Brooks. Captains were Julie Sercia, Lily Carino, and Chloe Wiener, and they were the Scholar Athlete Award winners. So I'd like to congratulate them. If our varsity tennis would please come up. We have Coach Frank Catania, Captain Sabrina Chung, Erica Joseph, Isabella Monticelli, and they also were our New York State Public High School Athletic Award winners for the Scholar Athlete Award. So congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Varsity Cheerleading. Coaches Jenna Crispo and Danielle Pizzuto. And with us tonight, we have Lily West, Melissa Connors, and Jessica Leahy. Please come forward. And again, they were the Scholar Athlete Award winners, their team also this year. Thank you, ladies.
Thanks.
Next is our Varsity Volleyball. and coaches Stacy Pittman and Kristen Bucci. Captains with us tonight are Megan Spencer and Juliana Bachhaus. They also were Scholar Athlete Award winners, and for the first time in a long time, they made it to the Final Four in Class A. So congratulations, ladies. Next is our varsity girls soccer. We have coaches Kelsey Hegg and Lauren DeFrancesco, captains Alicia Hawkins, Lily Mandel Mueller. They also were the Scholar Athlete Award winners. They also were league champions, and they made it to the quarterfinals in Class A, and we have a little certificate here for their league championship, and I do have it in there. So that's congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you,
guys.
ladies.
Congrats.
Congratulations.
Next, our varsity boys cross country. Coaches Mike Lacko and Jesse Arnett. Captains Ryan Allen, Colin Brooks, and Robert Moore. Scholar Athlete Award winners and league champions. Congratulations.
Great job, guys.
Congratulations. Next, our varsity girls cross country. Coaches John Vegliante and Alex Preissig. Captain Sophia Milosevic, Emma Murphy, Gabriella Parisi. They, wait for coach to get up here. Supposed to be a little quicker there. So they were also Scholar Athlete Award winners, league champions, and Gabby, please step forward. Also was a state qualifier and participated in the championship meet at Shenango Forks and did a tremendous job. And here we have 2 certificates. One for the league championship, which we will give to coach. Oh, look at that, perfect. And one to Gabby for qualifying for the state championship. Congratulations. Next, we have our varsity girls swim team. And with us tonight, we have, for the first time, our varsity swim coach, Brittany Pisano. And with her tonight is Julia Wilkinson. The swim team this year, and most of you do know, if you don't know, we are merged with Yorktown. They were league champions and conference champions, and they also were scholar athletes. And for the first time in school history, we had the diving sectional champion in Julia Wilkinson. Make sure I got this the right one. It is. So congratulations. Thank you. And next is our varsity football. Please come forward. We have head coach Anthony DiMatteo, Mike Sokolowski, Doug Packard, Mike Cleary, Doug Carpenter, captains Ethan Kraus, Trey Mancuso, Jake Polito, TJ Olifers, and Derek Marcus. They also were winners of the Scholar Athlete Award. They were league champions, section champions, regional champions, and New York State finalists up at Syracuse this past weekend. And when you travel to something like that and you come out on the bottom end, it still was an unbelievable feeling that the community had, that this group of men had. They have kept their heads high and represented us so well. And it was just an outstanding atmosphere for those of you that were able to be there. It was terrific. And congratulations to the entire team and to Coach DiMatteo in his first year for such an outstanding year.
Yeah.
Okay, next is our varsity boys soccer team. Did Coach Lanzetta have to sneak out? No, he stayed. Good man. He has to get to class, so I will try to move it along. So if the varsity boys soccer representatives, Coach Lanzetta, Justin Huff, his assistant coach, captains Jake Rena, Aiden Hopper, Michael Masiri, Daniel DiPolito, and Bennett Leitner. They also were Scholar Athlete Award winners, league, sectional, regional, and New York State Class A champions. Bennett and Daniel were both named by the New York State Coaches Association as All-State team members. Daniel was named the top high school soccer player in New York State on Sunday night, last night, and on Sunday night he was named All-American. So just one little anecdote here about this group. We went up to Middletown for the Final Four, and the game started off on Saturday, and it was over quickly. In my heart, I knew it was well in hand early, and to think that that happened in the semifinal, and then in the finals, they just did an outstanding job. So congratulations to Coach Lanzetta and the boys varsity soccer team for bringing home a second championship in the last 5 years. So congratulations. And just to close, I'd like to, we had this fall, we had 6 league champions, 1 conference champion, 2 sectional champions, 2 regional champions, and 1 New York State Public High School champion. A very successful season, but more importantly, as far as I'm concerned here, we are student athletes first, and this is the first time that all 10 of our varsity teams qualified for the New York State Public High School Scholar Athlete Award, and I'm very proud of that. And thank you. So I would really hate to do this to the board, but I think I'm going to get rid of most of your audience at this time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Cadano. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
I feel like you should stand up and clap for them. I want to stand up and clap for them.
It's pretty cool.
That's awesome. Yeah. It's a testament to the school. Yeah. Really. Come on, we couldn't even like fist bump. You and I were so close in high six.
I know. I was at a wedding Sunday after.
I was going to say, be the seat
Yes.
filler.
Yeah, we'll take a minute. You can change your seating around if you
We
like.
don't want an echo.
Yeah, but I also got the boosters.
Oh, I heard that's a killer.
But 4 people we were hanging out with a lot.
Are you okay?
Yeah. I mean, I got tested.
good.
Fine.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, I have students who are getting it. Even with the booster, they're feeling really crappy.
Thank you, Paul. And Roman, if you wouldn't mind just grabbing that door, I appreciate that very much. Thank you, sir. So as we just go ahead and get ready to shift to the kind of central office report, hopefully you got a sense of the energy of the support. Our children, we are back in school. And we're doing it fully with the athletics and the activities. And if you didn't get a chance to see the drama, a few weeks ago and stuff at the high school, great stuff. So it's happening. Different, but it's happening. So I'm so glad and nice to see the smiles on everybody's faces and their excitement here. And again, I couldn't
You
be
mean you could see
prouder.
smiles for these? Right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
In the eyes. Yes, nice.
So this is what it's about. So thank you for giving us this time board tonight, as we usually do 3 times a year. And thank you, Ms. Catalina, for bringing all the players and all the coaches forth. A well-deserved kind of recognition for our student athletic program. And like you said before, first time ever, all recognized as Scholar Athlete team. So well done, sir.
Great.
Well, let me go ahead and just jump right into our central office report. We have 3 things here this evening. So we have our operations report. We've just this little bit what we've historically done in the past. So we've got technology coming forth quickly, and that'll be Kim Blau, Director of Technology Services, with that information. And then we'll go ahead and we'll look at our safety and security envelope, and Dan Corrado will be coming to speak about that. And then we'll be having a brief update from the transportation here. We'll have Nate Spence will be here with that. And then we'll close with Anthony D'Amato here, will speaking about buildings and grounds. That will lead us into a little bit of the conversation from the budget overview. We'll spend more time in January, a little bit deeper in some of those areas, like some of the technology needs and such as that. And then the last thing we'll close on the central office report is hopefully just a quick draft of the calendar for 22-23 school year. So we'll go ahead, and I'll go ahead and see if, Kim, if you're okay, if you wouldn't mind coming up here. Thank you very much, Kim. So Kim Blau has been with the board a couple of times in the past before, but Kim pulled together some high-level infrastructure. I know you'll hit a few points, and we'll see if there's questions from the board. So thank you, Kim.
Hi, thank you for having me, board. Just want to start my presentation by just thanking the board for your continuing support with some of the security systems that we've obtained over the most recent years, as well as the continued support with the one-to-one student devices. That's something that we do every year for the kids, and it seems to be working.
Kim, I'm
really
sorry.
well.
Could you get a little closer to the mic?
Can you hear me now?
So Kim, you're not going to hear that people ask you to talk louder most often, I know, but right. But
You know, I was a
can't
little
hear,
self-conscious about how if I get too close, I might sound too loud. I have the natural loud voice. So just wanted to start by saying that thank you all for your continuing support on the one-to-one devices and the enhanced security, cybersecurity tools that we've obtained over the last few years. So with that said, just want to highlight one thing that we just enhanced this year is the new cloud backup solution. Before we had the cloud backup, we were just doing local backups. Now we're taking that to the next level. We're doing cloud solution, which is external outside of our network. As you all know, with all the, it seems like schools are becoming more of our target with hackers. So we need to, that's one of the things that we have to have ready to go, not just internally, also elsewhere, just as to be able to recover quicker. So that's just one thing I want to highlight. Software and hardware, just high-level summary numbers. And then the one part that I really want to focus on is the infrastructure area, which is an area where our network components are aging. So a lot of them are becoming end of life, which means, there's no more warranties. So I partnered together with Edutech and come up with a 5-year plan to start, upgrading and updating some of that equipment. We're taking a building approach to those, updates. And we're going to be starting with a middle school, moving along with a high school, and then finishing up with SIS and PRIM. Again, that's to do also, with security, after once the equipment is end of life, the vendors don't support any firm updates, any software updates. So that's really what the hackers are looking for. They're looking for those gaps. So we want to make sure that we're not, that we don't get to a place where we can, that it will open us up too much to any of that stuff. So that'll be coming along. I know Chris later will mention how we're going to go about that financially. So he'll talk to that a bit more in detail during his presentation. Another thing I want to highlight is the support, the tickets that have been open since the beginning of the school year. As you can see, we're nearing 3,000 as of the end of November. Edutech has been amazing, at supporting and closing a lot of these tickets. You can see that one of the new things that they brought on to Somers is, if you notice at the bottom, we have 65 preventative tickets. What those tickets are, and we didn't have this with the prior vendor that was supporting our infrastructure, what those tickets are is reminders to the team to just, restore the backups. We have great solutions, but we got to test them out. So they get daily and weekly reminders, okay, go in there, it's time for this server to be restored and make sure that it works. Some of the other things is just reminding them, we have all these monitoring, logging mechanisms. Make sure you're looking at them to make sure that you don't see anything weird. So that's the kind of preventative maintenance tickets that we have in the system. And lastly, it's just over this summer we upgraded our internet bandwidth to 2 gigs. That's been great. So and now we're able to potentially down the line, and I'm hoping. I joke with Dr. Blanche, I'm hoping I'm retired by this time, we can go up to 10 gigs of, gigabits, which, I'm hoping not until, years from now, but we have that capacity now, where before we could only go up to 1 gig. So we've upgraded our systems to be able to support that additional bandwidth. So that's pretty much all I have. So thank you so much. I don't know if anybody has any questions.
Kim, who are we using who's our backup solution? What company?
Barracuda. Barracuda.
Now, I heard today on the news that AWS had some issues.
Yes.
I mean, if something like that happened with Barracuda or Cisco, will that interrupt our systems or interrupt anything?
Well, the backup is not necessarily something, it's not something we're using constantly. It's just taking clips and snippets of our data in our operating system software. So that shouldn't affect us. I know with the Amazon piece, we had some vendors that use Amazon for their data, storage. We saw a little bit of effects on that, but the backup doesn't necessarily work that way.
We store it where, though?
What's that?
Where do we store the actual copies of data? And on the virtual servers you mentioned in here, or?
So we have 2 locations. We have virtual servers that do their local backup, and then we have cloud on the cloud, which is hosted by the Barracuda services.
By Barracuda services.
Yep.
And then as far as secure data, so the kids' personal identifiable information, I don't know what we keep. Where is that stored? Do we keep that on our file server, or is that in like an HR system or school
we
system?
have various systems that store that kind of information. We only keep student number, last name, first name. Really the biggest database that keeps most of that information is our student management system, which is Infinite Campus. That's where you get the schedules, and the teachers, can run their grade books and, have their classes and stuff like that. That is here locally, but I'm in the process of reaching out to the vendor and seeing if I can move that cloud, just because, they provide more enhanced security if we move things. All the vendors that we work with, because of Law 2D compliance, they get vetted to make sure they're following the requirements to protect and secure the data that we have that we're giving them access to. So, there's a process to that, to make sure that they're doing their due diligence to protect and do the best they can to prevent any type of data breach.
Great. That's good to hear that you're moving that off. For any of the other vendors that do house the non-public information of our students and faculty, do we enforce multi-factor authentication across all those? So
multi-factor is a little trickier and it's fairly new. We just implemented multi-factor to a team that has like a system admin access. For the little ones, it's kind of hard to do the multi-factor because that causes interruptions in the classroom. Then the teachers, waste more time trying to help them figure it out. A lot of the multi-factor requires a cell phone to authenticate. A lot of the little ones don't have that.
Yeah, less so for the kids. My concern is actually for the apps that you mentioned that might have the sensitive information.
Yeah, so for instance, we have Clever, which hosts a lot of our data. So those folks like me and my team that have administrative access to it, we have the multi-factor setup.
Great.
But we're investigating. We want to get better and better at it. The one thing I don't want to take digital security for granted. So I'm always constantly looking for better solutions. But I also have to keep in mind that the audience. The kids are little. I got to make sure that it's not going to interrupt their instructional time in their classroom. So, but yes, I am definitely exploring that, and we've implemented it with some of the system admin users.
Got it. And then, sorry, last question. Have we done is there a risk assessment that the school or state funds or anything like that for school districts?
So I did one back in 2008, 2009, through Core BTS. As a matter of fact, that's going.
18, 19?
Oh, really? Is it that? Oh, my God.
2018, 19. Yeah.
Yes, sorry. So.
Nick's a little nervous. Nick.
Yeah, look, I don't do this too often. You can tell. So 18-19 school year, we had Core BTS. They came and they did a full-blown NIST framework assessment against our system. Through that assessment is why we ended up getting some of the Cisco solutions that we have now. When we have the umbrella, which is our DNS protection, we have our endpoint protection through AMP, and then we have the email filtering mechanism. So we've done, I plan to continue. My next step to that will be to do some penetration testing. I put some money aside to just try to get that going, and since I want to say 2 years now, back to back, I've been budgeting to just have consulting cybersecurity, because we're not, we have a great team here, but we're not cybersecurity experts. So I'm looking for that, looking for that expertise elsewhere so that we can, make sure that we're preparing our systems for things like this.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Kim. And I think just a couple of things as you step out. We'll talk a little bit more about the anticipated infrastructure needs a little bit tonight, but more in January about the technology increasements there that Kim mentioned before. You had also mentioned about the tickets that are being closed by our new partners in CoreStar. Again, one of the things we're seeing there in relationship to, we've really turned the educational envelope kind of on its head just over the last 18 months with now K through 12, every student having a device. Just the increase of usage of the technology, both hardware, software, teacher increases. We're seeing a fairly large uptick in those cases being really more educational type courses, as opposed to I have a printer problem or I have a drive problem and things like that for more wires and pliers. So we would anticipate, and we're seeing now, a need for kind of instructional technology support there directly. We are asking a lot of K through 12 for folks to really use technology in a strong instructional way. We were doing relatively well before. This is a significant increase in a very short period of time. So we'll kind of keep an eye on that, but we do see a need for some instructional technology to support, and so I'll keep you abreast of that as we hopefully get closer. What that would look like is kind of a more likely a teacher or special assignment that's coming in working directly with teacher teams and groups and how they can use technology to support student learning in their classroom. And not just substituting from hard copy to digital copy, but really, modifying their curriculum and really changing that revolutionary around, as opposed to just hard copy to soft copy, which is, is good, but it's not where we want to stay. So just let you know that we'll see that coming learning office. We'll keep working on that. They try to provide opportunities. Kim and her team also try to provide trainings. I was at our last PLC meeting, and I know we had some of the team out there doing the best they could, so how to use the hardware and things like that, but now it's how can we look at using some of that software. So, all right, thank you very much, Kim, appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, go ahead, if it's all right, if Dan is, if you don't mind coming up, and I'll just go ahead and switch my slide here. So, Dan Carrata here is, again, a number of years ago, we partnered with Altair Safety and Security. Dan is now here, has been with us for a couple of years now, overseeing the overarching safety and security of the school district. He's been intimately involved with our latest safety and security project. So you'll see some of the elements that came out of that multi-million-dollar project and some of the other ongoing pieces are going. So I'll go ahead and turn over to Dan, hit a couple highlights, and again, if the board has any questions along the way.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Blanche, for that nice introduction. And also giving me the opportunity to speak about some of these upgrades that the district has worked so hard on. So I have been with you, Somers School District, now for about 3 years almost. I started out part-time, but now I've been full-time for the last year or so. And I've seen a tremendous upgrade in the security and safety field with the district. A lot of upgrades that help keep our students, staff, faculty, and keeping everybody safe. When it comes to safety and security, really, it's not just the technology that keeps us safe. It's the technology that we have in place, along with people who we have working in the buildings, helping to keep us safe. So on the infograph that we have up on the screen, there's a number of icons up there with touching on different aspects of upgrade. I'm just going to touch on a couple of them that I think are really important. The very top one in the center is the 24/7 monitoring of the buildings. So we have fire and burglar alarms that go 24/7, throughout the year. If an alarm goes off during the night, notifications go out to a number of people within the district, as well as the building custodians, head custodian, director of facilities, Anthony, and everybody gets those notifications. So this way, somebody always responds and checks in to see what's going on to make sure the building is okay. So that's real important. We also have 24/7 reporting on our anonymous alerts system. There's a link on the district page as well as all of the building web pages that anybody who wishes to make a report, whether it's a student, it could be staff member, community member, anybody who has a concern that they want to get to the district, they can make a report on anonymous alerts. That will go to a building administrator, and they can follow up on it if it's off hours or during the day or whenever, as they're capable of. That anonymous alerts should not be confused with 911. If you have a real emergency that you need help immediately, it's important for people to know anonymous alerts is not the way to go. 911 for any kind of an emergency that you might have or a concern that you might have with a building is the best way to go. We've also added 5 to 7 lockdown buttons within each building, placed usually within the SRO office, the main office, where it's easy accessible to those folks, but it's also kind of monitored. So they're not all over the building where, a kid might walk by and pull or, do something along those lines. We're seeing a lot of that right now across the country of kids calling in, false threats and things in order to shut down the schools. So that's a big thing. But we have ours strategically placed within main offices, SRO offices. So if that lockdown button is initiated, somebody pushes it, what happens is immediately notifications go out to a bunch of people. It goes to a call station, which will immediately notify the New York State Police that there's a lockdown going on. Also, text and email notifications go out to all of the building and district administrators, as well as myself, all of our SROs, the SRO sergeant, and the Westchester County Police Department communications desk gets an email. So everybody knows right away, all law enforcement, so they can react as absolutely quickly as possible. One of the biggest upgrades, I would say, probably is our camera systems. So back in 2018, before this project began, we had about 70 cameras, the far majority designated just to the high school. As of now, we've got almost 300 cameras and license plate readers that are in the district. Each building has 2 license plate readers. And the cameras are of a much better quality than they were with the past ones that we were using. The features are really good for zooming in, zooming out, and getting a really good look at a situation that might be taking place at the time. So the camera upgrade is a tremendous asset to the district for sure. So one of the other benefits of the camera system has been, and I think any of our administrators can attest to this, is tracking down the contact tracing and trying to determine who needs to be quarantined or not quarantined. That's been a tremendous help. The cameras in the cafeterias and all around the building to see how close the contact kids really were with each other. So that's been one of the unintended benefits that just so happens really worked out for us.
Yeah, we didn't anticipate that.
No.
I don't think we really planned for that to be what we were going to use them for, but it's worked out. So besides technology, technology does not respond to situations. People respond to situations. So it's really nice that we have all this stuff, but we still need people to kind of manage the system and keep an eye on what's going on. So of course we've got our building district administrators that are trying to help to keep us safe. Faculty and staff work real hard every day. I see that, making sure that we keep our kids safe. And then, of course, we have our school resource officers. So each building has a school resource officer. and they assist in just about every aspect of, the day as it goes along. They start at arrival, helping with the people coming in and out. Dismissal, the same. They're constantly walking around, checking doors, assessing the buildings, making sure that everything is safe and working as it's supposed to be. Our SROs will also receive any kind of 911 notification that goes right to their office phone as well as their cell phone in case they're walking around the building. Same thing with lockdowns. They get those notifications right away so they can immediately respond to whatever's taking place at that location. In the afternoon and evenings, we have security guards that monitor the people coming in and out of each of the buildings. They're stationed at the main entrance in the evening, and they monitor folks coming in and out. So these folks are working with our technology in order to make sure that we are as safe as we can be. Dr. Blanche, could you move that slide up just a little bit?
Yes,
so
sir.
we can see that bottom portion there. So the ones on the top are things that we already have totally completed. They're done. Everything is functioning. These two that I put in on the bottom are some of the upgrades that are still in progress. So we have our door ajar system or our door alarms that are mostly installed at this point. What we're still working on is kind of the logistics of how that's going to be monitored and training that we have to do with faculty and staff as well as the students to know that certain doors should be used to enter and exit the building and some will not. Once we get the system fully up and running, there's only going to be certain doors around the building, and whereas between 5 and 10 that are going to be ones that we're going to want faculty coming in and out of, or even leaving the building. They'll have to use their swipe cards the same way they swipe in and hit the swipe reader and swipe out. One other thing we're working on is the Incident Command Center. So right kind of behind where you're all sitting to the right over there, that's one of the doors that goes into the Incident Command Center that we're working on. We're waiting for a couple pieces of furniture and monitoring stations still to be delivered. I think they're out on cargo ships someplace, but we're still waiting for that stuff to come in. But once that does come in, that's going to be a really good space between, if we do have an emergency, for district administration and emergency response services to work together and oversee whatever the situation is and respond to whatever we need, support, and anything that the buildings are going to need in the event of a critical incident. We're also going to use that space for training. We'll have a conference table, and you could probably, I will be using it for sure. We already had one training with Dr. Blanche and a couple other administrators on the camera system and how the camera system all works. So probably, I'd say up to 10 or 12 people maybe that we could fit in there and run some training through. So I just want to close by just letting you know that I work real close with the SROs. I share an office with the SRO that's here. I'm in contact, not daily, but a couple of times a week with the sergeant of the SRO program. And he's mentioned to me on numerous occasions that seeing what we have here in Somers and how we operate between the technology we have and the emergency response procedures that we use, that he considers us like one of the standards as far as districts go, and that he talks to his other SROs and in his other districts trying to see if we can bring everybody up to where Somers is right now. So that's just a credit to the board and to the district in doing a really good job with the safety and security. So that's all I have.
If it's all right, I have a question. A couple of years ago, when we, in 2018, when we put forth this bond for safety security, one of the projects that I see mentioned here are the security gates, and I know we have at SIS, which also serves for SMS and the high school, but I don't see Primrose on there. And I'm just curious, have we seen that they've been helpful? How are we demonstrating that they've been a good investment for us? And is this an area we should consider maybe for Primrose as well?
Well, I think the gates have done a very good job of holding traffic, because I'll use this side for instance. Around the loop, we have kids out there during recess all the time.
Yeah.
Every day they're out in the loop, and I think those are a good barrier to anybody who's coming in who does not sure where to go, wants to make a delivery or come at an off time. I think it's been very helpful here, for sure, on this campus. I know on the, at the high school side, limiting access around that building for their bus loop too, for the buses to come in, that one. And I know there's another one in the back to help keep people from going down to the backfield. And then the one that's on the side by the baseball field that keeps the vehicles from running up to the back up there. We've got a lot of students out there too, between practices and gym classes and things that they're doing out there. Again, limiting the vehicle exposure to the back of the building. As far as Primrose goes, the kids are in more of a contained area, I think. They're not really, there's no recess going on in the parking lot like they have over here. They have the two playgrounds in the front and back, and they're, that's where they stay unless, I have seen this year in the summer, again, in an issue in a way to get out of the building and keep the kids, mask break and things. They have come out to that center circle right in the middle, and have run a class, for a time or two, just to get the kids outside and get their masks off and be able to get some fresh air. So I have seen that, but for the most part, there's really no kids coming in around the loop. So I'm not sure if it pays to put one in there or not. I think we probably have to look at that a little closer.
Thank you.
Dan, when do you see the door alarm sensors and the command center being up and running? And second part of the question is, what other things do you maybe foresee down the future for us to be doing?
So the door alarm sensors, by the time, so we have all signage we were waiting for too. That was the other thing, because we wanted to make sure that faculty and staff, again, without knowing where every single card reader is going to be, they would be able to read the signage that's on the door and know that this is one they should be using. It'll tell them they have to swipe out, or it'll be one that says, this is not the door to use. Obviously, if there's an emergency, everything is you go out whichever door you have to. If there's an evacuation or the fire alarm goes, you go whichever. But if I had to put a time on it, I would say we need time for training, maybe January-ish, to get the door alarms going. And the other logistical thing we're still working out is when those alarms go off, who answers them? Who's going to go check if a door gets propped? If it's forced open, if, whatever the case is. If somebody goes out the wrong door, then, we have to, make sure that we're trained the staff so that they know. So a lot of the success of that system is going to rely pretty heavily on our staff, so that they're, they understand, they've been trained properly, and they understand the way that should be used. The command center, it's already pretty much running. The desk, we're just starting to wait for the desk, the conference tables. And once those things get there, I don't know, we are just waiting for transit. We're just waiting for them to get here. And
So it'd be safe to say that by the end of February, these two systems should be fully operational.
I hope so, yes.
What do you see coming down the pike, if anything?
That I'm not real sure what's coming. We never know what's coming. We couldn't predict COVID coming down the pipe, and then all of a sudden that changed completely, how we look at certain things. So, it's hard to say. I'd like to get that command center running, and that's going to be a big benefit between the training we can do and then the working with the EMS, if we do have a live event.
Okay. I have one quick question about the anonymous alerts. So I know 24/7 you can put in an anonymous alert.
Right.
And I'm not sure exactly how it gets transmitted to those people it gets to. So if somebody becomes aware of something and they put in an alert in the evening or like late afternoon, would it definitely be seen by somebody in the school before school started the next day?
It will be seen, and then based on what it is, there will be a determination. Is this something that needs to be acted on immediately, or is this something that we can wait to until the morning to look at it? If it's a real, I don't want to say real emergency. If it's a real emergency, 911 should be used in order to get the help that's necessary. But if it's identifying a threat of some sort, then yeah, that was something to have to be tackled immediately.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
All right, I think Nate's here. Nate, I didn't recognize you at first, but there's no bright colors. I didn't see it first. It's good. So. You did? Okay, thanks. So thank you, sir. So Nate will go ahead and just give us an update here on the transportation, then Anthony will be next, and we'll head right into the budget conversation. So thank you, Nate.
Good evening, everyone. I first wanted to start out with the state of the department and our little bit of a driver shortage that we're still experiencing. We are still 3 drivers short right now. We are trying to work the best that we can with this. I don't think there's any more consolidation that we can do. It's something that we look at on a weekly basis to try to see if there is a way to improve the service that we're giving to the students and the parents of the school district. In years past, we had 57 routes with about 3 to 5 spare drivers. Now we have 53 routes with 0 spare drivers. So this is happening, unfortunately, nationwide. And like I said, we're working on this as quickly as possible.
So if you don't mind me asking, with the 0 spare drivers, what happens if a bus driver's out?
They use the mechanics in the shop and also the safety manager that's there.
Okay, and they have all the training that's necessary?
That is correct. They're all vested in the correct SCD procedures and policies, as well as 19A for DMV.
So our bus drivers would be the mechanics in the bus garage, not people that have typically driven the route. Is that right?
That is correct, but the mechanics have been here for several years, so they're familiar with a lot of where the routes go and the areas that the routes go.
And they have the certification that they need to be able to drive a bus, licensing rather, sorry.
Yeah.
That is correct, yes.
Okay.
So they
one
are
thing
spare
that-
drivers.
I'm sorry?
So they are spare drivers.
Well, technically,
I'm a
yes,
spare
they are
teacher,
spare
but
drivers,
I've
but
been
we
a
don't
guy
like
for a
to
long
use
time.
them as spare drivers. Just because when they're not in the shop, they're not working on the vehicles,
right.
which parts have been an issue getting, so they're trying to balance that out as well.
Absolutely.
One thing that I did bring into the school district was the extended stop arm program. I'm sure you've seen some of them out in the school district. It's the 6-foot arm that extends out into the open roadway. We've seen really great success with this, on average about 87% on the pilot that we did last year. Royal Coach is giving us 3 every school year for the next 3 years. We got our first 3 this year with our contract, and we had the one that was donated last year, so that gives us a total of 4 on those. They've been placed on the worst routes that we've seen the most passers. We're continuing.
And all the buses have cameras or some notification or is it the bus drivers that?
It's the bus drivers that give those reports.
Bus drivers, okay.
There's a form that they fill out, so if a motorist does pass their red lights, they can get their license plate, if they're able to get their license plate and the make, model, and color of the vehicle. DMV just sends them a NASCIgram. It's nothing that's fine enforceable or anything like that. One thing that we are working on, it's not approved fully in Westchester yet, is the stop arm cameras. With the stop arm cameras, that's something that will be enforceable by local law enforcement. So we're really looking forward to that. It's in Suffolk County right now, and they've seen a tremendous improvement in passing motorist violations down there.
Thank
Good.
you.
One other thing that we've been doing is, in the past, our monitors used to get the training that our drivers got. So twice a year, the drivers and monitors have to go through a 2-hour safety course, which when you have monitors sitting in a class that's kind of designed for drivers, it's not always the best scenario for them. So we've brought in some of our own programs to teach some socio-emotional things to our bus attendants, to get them to think outside of themselves and to empathize with the students on their buses. One other thing that I also thought was very important, especially with the kids being home for so long, SED only requires that we do 3 bus drills a year. We now do 4 here at Somers, just because I feel that there's better ability to perform when we have repetition, so that's something that we've improved as well. And we've also implemented for K through 5 a good behavior bus club, where drivers have the ability to submit a form to transportation. I work with the administrators and talk it over with them and see if they're good in school, and then they get a certificate saying that they've had outstanding behavior on the bus.
Thank you, Nate. Any questions from the board on?
Great, thank you.
You didn't bring any CL CDL licensing with you. I thought we'd have to pass out some.
If anybody wants a CDL
yeah,
book,
right,
they're
right.
readily available in the transportation department.
Ray, are you suggesting that we deserve one of the good behavior clubs for not asking
I'm not going to go that far. Thank you very much, Nate. I
Thank you
appreciate
all.
it, sir.
Thank you.
All right. And then we've got Anthony here this evening. We'll go ahead and look at the facilities piece from a high perspective. So Anthony is new on board here this summer. I guess it's maybe been 90 days or something. I don't know exactly what it is, but
I'm pretty new.
We'll go ahead and get you started. So again, highlight piece here, and again, as Anthony's, we'll speak a little bit directly about the energy performance contract, as that's a big part for us, and that'll lead us into some of the budget stuff. So take it away, Anthony.
Sure. So thanks very much. I appreciate some face time with the board, so thank you. I just want to start out just a little bit of a background on the facilities and facilities department on a whole. So the facilities themselves, it's made up of 5 primary buildings. We have 4 schools, one being a transportation facility. There's approximately 600,000 square feet of actual building space on 55 acres. Includes 3 playgrounds and currently 2 turf fields. On the staff side of things, we have 23 custodians, 7 maintenance and grounds workers, 1 courier, 0.5 admin assistant, and 1 director of facilities. Funding our future. So in 2020, there was a building condition survey completed for the district, and it highlighted some of the high-end facility needs. And from this survey, the district went ahead and developed a 5-year plan to address some of those facility needs. There's several ways to fund these needs outside of the general fund. And the first I want to speak about is the energy performance contract. First off, I'd like to thank the board. As the new guy coming in here, this is really exciting to walk into and get to start working on very, very soon. So thank you, it's exciting. So this is an $8.9 million project that includes these upgrades to new energy efficient building systems, and it's funded by its own energy savings. So things like original boiler plants that are still left in our buildings, and upgrading the building management system from pneumatic to all electronic, as well as lighting throughout the buildings. So currently this project is being reviewed by the state, so it's up at the state level. As soon as it is approved, it comes back down, and we can start moving forward to the actual construction phase, hopefully by mid to late spring. There are some other ways of funding some of these needs and these repairs. One, for some of these smaller type repairs, is to establish a repair reserve, and that's established and voted on by the board. And again, it's used for the smaller repairs that might just be a little bit too big to attack with the general fund. So things like some heating needs that we might have, or temporary paving, or even some flooring and things of that nature. As we move to some slightly larger projects that we'd like to be able to do, we would look to establish a capital reserve. And so that amount is established by the board, and it's voted on by the community. And so this fund, again, is used to complete some larger scale project without having an increase in debt service. So some ideas that we have is an upgrade in athletic fields, as well as starting to address some of the larger scale paving and concrete work throughout the district. At the end of the day, there are still a lot of large-scaled items that need to be addressed in that 5-year plan. So in order to do that, we would have to go out for a capital bond project. Of course, this is a large project with a predetermined scope and cost, and it'll be voted on by the community, and the district will have to take on some debt in order to complete this project. So these are the really large-scale paving and concrete that's really needed district-wide. Things like some serious upgrades to some original rooms at the high school, and so it's those type of upgrades that we'd be looking to do in a capital project. So those are sort of the buckets that we're looking at to be able to fund and address the issues from the BCS and in the 5-year plan.
Thanks, Anthony.
Yep.
Any questions from the board? Again, we'll talk a little bit more in some detail as far as the energy performance contract, example of what we did for the last capital reserve fund that will be requesting now here. So we have a little bit even more tonight to talk about some of that work, so.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
With that, if it's all right, I'll just go ahead and jump right into the work on the budget side here. And Chris, I'll let you get started. I know the first few slides are fairly just process-wise where we're going. And then we'll kind of go back and forth a little bit as far as some of the revenue expenditures. And please, any questions that pop up along the way, just drop right in, so.
Sure.
Chris.
Again, it's hard. It's hard to believe that we're having our first budget presentation here this evening for the 22-23 budget. But if you just want to hop on to the next slide. Here we just have the overall contents that we're going to go through tonight. Budget development, some driving factors for the 22-23 budget. Again, this is early stages of the budget development process, so a lot of the numbers still aren't final. We're still getting numbers in from the state. So just some of the high-level driving factors. We'll go through some of our reserve balances, talk about the tax tertiary reserve, debt service, and then we get into some of the things that Anthony was alluding to with our capital funding methods for some future infrastructure needs and the possible capital reserve that we'd be looking for the voters to approve in May. This slide just highlights the budget development process, which has already begun. We've been already having meetings with building administrators, starting to populate some of their budgets already. Some of the biggest budget variables are always the tax cap levy, the use of fund balance or other reserves to help balance the budget, and then just some of the expenditure increases that are out of the control of the district. Things we're talking about are like for the retirement system and health insurance. And then as one of our other revenue funding sources, state aid. You'll see in a slide later on the impact that that's having on the district as well. And all leading to the budget vote this May 17th. So again, with the annual budget, it's a balancing act between the revenues and expenses. Here we've listed out some of the larger revenues and expenses. So on the revenue side, we have property taxes, which make up I'll say 80% or so of, probably 85% or so of the district's budget. And then you also have county sales tax, state aid, and then there's various other revenues in there as well. On the expenditure side, obviously, most people would know that the largest portion of expenses is salary and benefits. It's the people here. And then there's also a few other buckets such as transportation, debt service, that make up a majority of the budget there. All right, so now jumping into some of those driving factors on the revenue side. So the tax levy cap calculation, it's CPI or 2%, whichever is less is used in that calculation. CPI is trending well above 2% this year. There are other years where it's well below 2%, and we're stuck at whatever number that is. It's going to be above 2% this year. So for the calculation itself, we're going to be using 2%, we assume. That's not set now for another couple months. But that's the CPI, that number, that 2% number is used for the calculation. Then there's also exclusions that go into that calculation for your debt service, and then you have to back out some of your aid that you get on that. So currently, preliminary projections here, our maximum levy that we could go out would be approximately 3.6% increase to the levy. That's with the allowable exclusions. We would just need a majority of the voters to approve it. It's not overriding the tax cap. It's the allowable levy limit would be 3.6%. At this point in time, we're not looking at this point to go up to that 3.6%. We'd be looking at staying right around that 2% number. Then the next bullet there for state aid. So over the past few years prior to last year, there was the foundation aid that districts across the state were not fully funded on. Now, a court case has been settled, and now the state is supposed to be fully funding that foundation aid for districts. So last year, they gave us an increase. We're again looking at another projected increase of $1.3 to $1.5 million in our foundation aid. And that would be the same actually for the following year as well, to have us fully funded.
It's an increase. What's the total?
Total state aid, I want to say somewhere around 11 million, 10 or 11 million now.
Okay.
But with that increase for this year, we also have a decrease in our building aid because one of our projects from a while ago was you get 15 years payback on the aid. We refunded that bond, so we still have some debt service associated with that project, but we're no longer going to be receiving the aid on that project. So that decreases our building aid. So we're still looking at a net increase of somewhere between $700,000 to $900,000 in our state aid overall compared to last year.
And Chris, that number will, we anticipate, be staying relatively exactly the same for the following year with the anticipated third of 3 steps, increased foundational aid, and then the second piece of the decrease in building aid. So again, for the 23-24 budget, that number should be relatively the same as what we're seeing there. So
Yeah, that's correct. It should be.
As an increase.
as a net increase,
Net
right?
increase. We're
Okay.
expecting
Yeah.
it to go up again.
So that loss of, that decrease that loss had been because of a change in how it was calculated, the building aid was calculated or given?
So the building aid, because you get the building aid over 15 years, that project, the 15 years is now coming to an end.
Oh, okay,
But
okay,
we
got it.
refinanced that bond, so we still have debt service on the bond, but we're no longer receiving any aid on that project.
Okay,
Because
got
that
it.
ends after the 15 years.
Okay.
For that particular project.
Understood.
Sales tax, seems like home sales and everything has been still holding pretty steady. So we think we'd be able to increase that revenue stream by about $300,000 for next year. There was some concerns prior year with COVID and everything, but I think as everyone has seen, home sales are increasing and prices of home sales are increasing, so that's helping drive some of that sales tax numbers. The appropriated fund balance, so for the 21-22 budget that we're in now, we used about $325,000 to help balance the budget. And currently, we're projecting that we're going to be able to we might use around the same, or we might be able to kind of cut that in half down to about $150,000. Again, it's very early on in the budget process here. We'll still fine-tune some of these numbers as we move forward in the next few months.
And for the board, you may recall, historically, we'll look at it in future pieces where that number has been close to $2 million that we've used out of fund reserve and close to zero. So it is that feathering that goes up and down to manage the ups and downs of the revenue and expenditures. So that's where we see it landing right now. So.
Okay.
Now we'll jump over to the driving factors on the expense side. So the first one there you have is the New York State teachers' retirement rate increase, which they've announced a range of about 10 to 10.5%. Currently, it's 9.8% for this year. 10 to 10.5% doesn't seem like a very large increase, but on the bottom dollar, it's a pretty large expense for any increase because that is those salaries are for all of our teachers and administrators. So even a 0.5% is a significant dollar amount. Then on the other side, you see the New York State Employees Retirement System rate. That decrease is looking like it's going from 16.2% down to 11.6%. That is a very large decrease for the retirement system rate there that the district has to contribute. One of the things that some of our organizations have been advocating for is a little more consistency. We don't really like to see these large drops or large increases in some of these rates because then from year to year, it's hard to really plan for some of these things. We'd rather it be a little more consistent. And I think TRS, the Teachers Retirement System, has been a little bit more consistent than the Employees Retirement System. And some of that has to do with some of their assumed rate of return on their investments, but we're still advocating to try to help smooth that out. We don't like seeing 5% decreases, because then the very next year you could see an 8% increase. So we'd rather it be much more consistent, so for a budgeting aspect, we're not seeing these very highs and lows. So then another big bucket here is health insurance. So we have the Empire plan, which is for all of our teachers. and that runs on a calendar year basis. So we did just receive the aggregate increase for calendar year 2022, and that is looking at 6.6%, which is much higher than we had anticipated. And now it's, obviously, we're concerned for the calendar year 2023, that we're not going to want to under budget that code, because it is a substantial amount of money that goes into health insurance. So we're looking at somewhere between 6 to 7% projected increase for calendar year 2023, which is half the year for next year. On the same line.
That doesn't get shopped around. That's we have to use Empire Plan.
Right. Yep. For the teachers, that's who we use, and then for the
And that's per contract that we use, yeah.
And then for all other staff, we have we belong to the Putnam Northern Westchester Health Benefits Consortium, and they just adopted their rates for the 22-23 year, and that is on a fiscal year, and that was set at 6%. Again, in the past few years, it's been somewhere around 2 to 3%. There was one year where it was an 8% increase. But again, it's on that Health Benefits Consortium board. It's composed of mostly business officials. And again, we're advocating for the consistency. We don't like seeing these large increases. We'd rather feather it in so we don't have these dramatic increases from year to year. The second to last
But
bullet.
the question, I don't know if it was answered or I didn't hear it. Like the Empire Plan, is that just like negotiated with the Teachers Association? Is that why we choose that plan? Or is there a way we could shop around for the best plan with a consistent increase? Is there a reason why we picked that one? Was the
Yeah,
question.
that's a contractual piece with each one of those bargaining units, correct.
So the bargaining unit chooses it, and
It
more or less, or requests.
Historically, yes, and I believe there was a time way back for us in the district, there was an attempt to change off of that plan. And then that was determined that was not okay to do. So then the district had to go back onto the Empire Plan. So yes, that would be that plan. And then, as Chris said, the PNW is, again, by contract with the support staff as well as the administrative staff. Those are those two that are negotiated. Yep. I don't know the specific numbers, but the large majority of school districts are in the Empire Plan. There's a handful that are for teachers. There's a handful that are in consortiums like this, but the significant majority are into the Empire Plan. And as we get a little bit detailed, we spent a few years ago, we spent some pretty detailed look at those because each one of those plans is a little different from family, one plan, family the other. So those are those numbers. But as Chris was saying, our estimates are it's about a $750,000 of an increase for health insurance just off the bat for next year, right off the bat from the get-go. Our numbers for the TRS and ERS numbers, those may come in relatively kind of washing each other out. As you see, the ERS is really dropping, but the value of that is a lot less than the teachers because of the salary amount. But so those will probably wash each other out. But it is the health insurance. It's probably about $750,000 increase in expenditures. Just give you a
So
sense.
if we keep our the levy at 2% as a goal, and we're able to keep it at
Right.
that, we're clearly needing to find savings elsewhere because these,
Are going up way
these
more than
increases
2%.
far outstrip a 2% increase in the.
And so that's where, with the anticipated increase from the state, even though it's not as much as we're still in positive, variance $700,000, $900,000 there you'd see, and then the increase in the tax rate. So yes, the ability for us to have a little bit of revenue that's going up is going to be a tight balance in that regard. So yep.
But some of this does help explain when we get questions saying, we've
That's
had
a big one,
declining
yeah.
enrollment. Why isn't our budget going down?
Yep.
Why do we have to keep raising it?
Yeah.
This is why.
Correct. Right.
Sorry, the pension rate increase, that's, is that a range?
So the TRS pension rate increase, they've announced a range. They won't give that final
So
number.
it's either a 10% or 10.5%.
Somewhere in between
increase.
10 and
It's not a
10.5%.
0.5% increase. Got it.
So, yeah, somewhere in between the 10 and 10.5% is what it's going to. And like I said, it's currently at 9.8%.
And has that traditionally gone up year over year at that type of rate, or is this?
So it's been, it's been down into 7%, 6%. I think it's even been lower than that at times. That's the fluctuation that Chris is speaking about before that range.
A reduction of 7%, you said, or?
So there's been times like this one, it's reducing from 16.2 for ERS down to 11.6 and
As an increase, though.
Different data.
Sorry?
No, but it is an increase, though. It's always been an increase, percentage increase year over year.
No, it's gone down.
It's gone
It
down.
has gone down, so it's been a negative number. So if we were paying $1 million, it went down negative 10%, we'd have to pay,
That's exactly what's going to happen with ERS in this example. ERS is going to be actually a savings to the district.
Right.
Because it's going from 16.2 down to 11.6, but it's a lot smaller number of the overall.
Yeah, because so this one here is we're paying, of our the pension rate is 16.2% of our salaries.
Yes.
Right, versus 11%. The other number that you're showing us up above is not the percentage of salaries, it is the change in that number.
No, that is the actual percentage of the salaries that we will be contributing to.
different-
That is the number, okay.
That is the number.
So it's not an increase of that, so it is 10% of the TRS salaries. It's either going to be a total of 10% of our TRS salaries or 10.5% of our
Correct.
TRS
Yep.
salaries.
Yep.
Got it, so it's not
Current year
a
was
net.
9.8.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's not a net increase of,
0.5,
Of
no.
10%?
Of
No.
10%.
It's going up to that possible rate.
got it, okay.
And that number that's what kind of gets us every year.
So the increase change is ranged between nothing and 0.5%.
Correct.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That's the increase.
Net
Got
gain
it.
is pretty much, yeah. And then the ERS came out and told us specifically what it's going to be.
Exactly what the
Yep.
number is, got it.
Yeah.
And do we have rationale for why that decreased so significantly? I missed that part, the specific ERS pension decrease.
So ERS dropped, a lot of it's tied to the market. If you recall, last year when they were setting the rate, I'm trying to go back when these years come to be, because of COVID, the market dropped at the beginning or end of March there, right when COVID hit. So that we saw an increase in the ERS rate the year subsequent, because the state year runs from April 1st to March 31st. So it dropped at the worst possible time. Then that following year, from April to the following March, the market did incredibly well and came back. So I think that's part of the reason why we're seeing a pretty large decrease now in that contribution rate. I think it could have actually been probably more, but they along with the teachers' retirement system lowered their assumed rate of return on some of their investments. So with specifically the teachers' retirement system, if they didn't do that, we probably would have seen the rate drop to, they said, to somewhere around 7%. But because they lowered their rate of return, that's why we're seeing a slight increase. ERS a little different, but same concept, where they lowered their assumed rate of return, but they're still seeing a significant drop. And I think part of that is because of the timing of their fiscal years and how it tied to the markets when it collapsed kind of with COVID.
So it sounds like it's a correction, right? Like it's almost a correction that's, like you said, tied to the market.
Yeah.
And so it's almost, as Nick was saying previously, going back to a more regularly expected bandwidth of increase, decrease, whatever, but we likely won't see such a drop of 5% again, do you think?
Probably not for the next few years.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a big
they look at it,
change.
they look at it on a 5-year smoothing basis there. And if when that COVID year comes off, that will significantly help districts across the state with the rate, because that bad year is now going to fall off from what they're looking at. But then the following year, that incredibly great year when the market rebounded is going to come off.
Fair.
So I think we're going to still have some of those swings. So like I was saying earlier, when we've been advocating for some of that more consistency, we're trying to have them maybe look at it over a 10-year basis instead of the 5-year, which might help lessen some of the blows when you have some of these really highs and some of these really lows.
Chris, who promulgates these formulas? Is it the Controller's Office or the Department of Education?
It's the controller's office that's doing this.
And how often do they revise the formula as far as the calculation? So what I'm trying to get is it a consistent formula that's been applied for 20 years, or do they change the formula periodically?
They change their assumed rate of return periodically, like they did, both of them just lowered it slightly.
That's not what I'm asking, though. I understand what
Okay.
you mean, but in calculating that presumed rate of return, the formula has been consistent, is that right?
Yeah, I don't think that they're changing the way they're calculating it.
And it's a mix of stocks and bonds in calculating the formula. So if you have a very high stock market, you may not get the benefit of it if the bond market has tanked and vice versa.
Yeah.
And certainly they're into real estate, and the portfolio is pretty broad scope as well, too, so.
And I think one of those changes that we're looking as far as actually calculating it is, instead of just doing it over 5 years, is that 10-year, like I said, to help kind of lessen the blow on some of these big highs and big lows. But that, again, they haven't said that they're even considering adjusting the way they're doing it, so.
And these funds, the pension funds for both groups, that's managed by the controller's office, correct?
Yep. And they're both very well-funded at this point in time. So.
And New York is honestly one of the rarer ones that is in that situation.
Yeah.
You were typically in New York considered one of the top 3 funded public retirement systems because of how they fund it. It is many other states, it is actually in the red or close to being in the red, or the state has borrowed significantly from that to balance their books and things. The retirement systems in New York are not. They're typically referred to as one of the top 3 in the.
They keep them in their silos. They don't go in and borrow the money.
Right.
All right, just quickly hop into transportation here. Again, transportation increase is related to the CPI index as well. That's actually a May CPI number. That's what the state uses. In the contract that we have with Royal Coach, we have it at whatever CPI is in that May, but it's capped at 3.25%. So last April, it actually shot up, the CPI shot up to about 3.2%. So that's the number that we ended up having to use for this current year's budget, this current year. Prior to that, we weren't budgeting for 3.2%. We were looking at 2%, which has been more typical and where CPI was trending, but it just happened to shoot up those month before it would be set. And now it's still trending well over 4%. So we're looking at budgeting, as far as budgeting is concerned, budgeting at the max of the 3.25%. Down to technology infrastructure. I know Kim mentioned this earlier in her presentation with some of the infrastructure needs that have been identified by EduTech, specifically for the middle school first. So one of the ways that we're looking to help fund some of that infrastructure needs that we need to have is through our lease purchase that we do every year. So with an additional roughly $125,000 to $150,000 in lease purchase, it'll allow us to get somewhere around $450,000 worth of some of this equipment to help us tackle some of the needs that have been identified by EduTech.
And when we walk through that, we'll look a little bit more in detail in the January meeting, specifically some of the pieces, in particular, be starting here with, we're centralized here with the Knox Center here at the middle school, so that'll be a starting spot. We'll be looking at the communications center here and the related hardware there. One piece that also is inside here, so we have a lease program for all of these devices that the children have and the faculty have, and those are on a 3-year lease. And so like next year, all the new 6th grade children here will get a new device, and all the kids in the high school get a new device in 9th grade, and so those are on a 3-year lease. So every year one goes off, one comes on, one goes off, one comes on. So we approximately, each one of those lease payments each year is around $200,000 to $220,000 for that kind of equipment going there. What this would be looking about moving that roughly $225,000, adding, let's say, another $150,000 on top of that, so that goes about $375,000. So what that'll be kind of our new baseline moving forward. With these dollars in particular, we have opportunity to access some of the E-rate funding, specifically for some of this equipment next year. So we anticipate a good portion of that, and we'll be able to get about a 40% rebate through E-rate to help supply that project. So, okay, so maybe it goes up $150,000 or $125,000. A portion of that will be able to come back through E-rate. And that's a part, again, working with EduTech, they're able to help us get into some of that. They brought that to attention. They identified it, so we have a number. We can spend basically that E-rate dollars that are available for the district from now till I think it was 2025 are up to $500,000 worth of equipment we can purchase that qualifies, and then we can go and get hit and get 40% rebate back on that. So basically at the end of that project, we'll be able to get a good portion of that all those dollars back from E-rate and things, and so that'll help us in there. We'll have a little bit more detail specifically about what that is in year one, and as Kim said, we'll be looking at that similar to year two and and then really getting that on a nice 5-year plan. We are definitely being more, people are knocking on our door on a daily basis trying to get into our systems. You may have seen that, districts right around us are kind of jeopardized in the fall. Most recently, the B&W BOE was taken and down for a couple of weeks for the most part, and so it's just much more prevalent. So, why would you go to a school? But, we're a $100 million corporation as well, too, with things and all kinds of things, and ransoming. So that's safety, security, the stuff that Kim's talking about, but just updating, our closets with our switches and our hardware. Part of the safety and security part helped us a fair amount that Dan was speaking about, because remember all those cameras are now, they're running over power over Ethernet switches and things, but there's just more to go that we have to get going, but we'll give you some more detail on that for sure. Then in the next one is just the budget history that we've got here. Just gives you a glimpse, and then when we start talking about our projections in 22, 23, we can look at, again, where we look at that CPI figure. For this year, we anticipate, again, that for us, it's going to be right around 2%. You see some years down, it was lower and things like that, and what's the actual amount that's allowed there, so we can go ahead and update that budget history as we come on this year. The following part here, and as we get into this, will kind of connect to where Anthony was speaking a little before about the reserves and our balances. So if we look at our reserves, we have the ERS piece. Now, we've got $3.5 million approximately in there for their reserve, and that's where Chris was speaking about before. We've had some of these really big, wicked swings up and down, so we've used those dollars to kind of offset that. That's a fairly robust number in there. TRS is a brand new, I think, Chris, is this the first or second year? Second year. So we've got that in there now for another spot to put reserves for any fluctuation in TRS. Again, those accounts can use this to just stabilize so we don't have programmatic cuts. It just allows us to handle some of the upticks and downs, because many things we see like the ERS, well, oh my goodness, it went up one year, well, let's take care of reserves, because then next year, the year after that, it may come back down, and we can't just add programs in and out. The large one here are tax surcharge reserves. I believe this is the largest we've ever had this in the district at this point in time, at any point in time, so just short of $7 million in there. That's an area that I know we've talked at the board table, the liability that's out there now is approximately $24 to $25 million. About 85% of it is related to, particular property, what was previously referred to as Pepsi and the IBM properties. Those are the big ones that are out there. It's all public record. Those are requests that are being out there for tax surcharge matters. It's back now 7 years. So every single year it builds, and then we don't know exactly what that's going to result in. Historically, it's been anywhere between 10 to 15% of the ask is what's kind of come out. With COVID, it's kind of not exactly sure. With this piece, we're going to continue to work with the Citizens Finance Committee and talk about at some point in time, and we may be there now, and saying we've saved as much as we do because we have other things to go through, as we were talking about, to take care of the buildings and facilities and things like that. Unassigned fund balance 4%. That number is basically there so that when something happens, if something happens, we have that emergency savings account to go ahead and after that part. Chris, other things you want to hit on the general areas in this one?
No, I think that's it. Just the unassigned fund balance, we've historically been at that 4%, and we'd look to continue to be at that 4% from year to year. But no, I think that's it.
So we'll hit a little bit more on the tax reserve. So this again speaks to the 22.7 or whatever. It's changing every day because as more come on and off. But you're pretty significant amount of money. You see the amount we have in the reserve. You can see historically what we've paid out over the last number of years in payments. Then again, 80 to 85%, because I think that we're getting a couple of the other ones that weren't acted on coming off as that, so that'll be the significant majority is there. So again, historically, it's been typically 10 to 15% of what kind of the liability is, and so if I looked at that number, say, okay, even if I went to 20%, it's $5 million, whatever, we got that plenty. Just don't know what we're dealing with there. The concern there is, again, as we look at the improvements that we've talked about with the 5-year plan, which is about a $25 million need for the paving and all the other work that we talked, some of the water systems and some of the areas. And we're obviously taking care of a good chunk of it with a project that Anthony mentioned with the boilers and the lights and things, but we've got that. So we need to really talk about at what point in time do we say, okay, enough's enough in that savings account. We need to hopefully start filling up a capital reserve account that we established in the spring.
So just to clarify,
Yep.
right, this, the claims pending and our potential reserve that we might need to fund that, just like our ability to do the updates to the energy, is sort of outside of our control. It's living, this instance is living in the legal system, yes? Just like
Yes.
the ability to actually enact the plans that we have for energy is currently living with the state, is that right?
It is, and with the part with the, that's now with the court system right now, is we are at the mercy of what comes out of that.
Do we have any indication of when, I mean,
Was it this week they were supposed to do the next one, or was it next week? They've had a
They had
few
one
meetings
meeting.
in the court system, but
Yeah.
it just keeps getting pushed.
And then they have a couple of dates scheduled in January and February, some trial dates. So at that point, we might have a better indication of where we're going to stand. And that's with one of the properties, not the other one. The other one, there hasn't been any real movement on at this point in time.
of the larger properties,
Yes.
right? Okay,
Yep.
the significant.
Okay, so you're
Thank
saying, go ahead.
No, sorry, thank you.
So you're saying at this point, we have, if they settle for about 20%, we're pretty, we're
Right.
good, we're
Yep.
good. And so it's
Yeah.
only that uncertainty if it ended up being more.
And that's where, how much farther do we keep trying to save before, you know, we start putting some funds away for the
Right, so it may be
other
time to
projects.
stop that one and work on something
Right,
else.
right.
Okay,
And some
because you could always
districts
use
don't-
unassigned fund balance.
That's a good point.
Because unassigned fund balance could also be used for that, too.
It could be.
needed to.
The intent there is that's really emergency. Let me go back to their slide, because some other areas that may come forth later in the budgeting process, like the ERS reserve. I would say comfortably we could bring that down. I would say to $1.5 million to $2 million. Again, that number is a pretty big portion of what the salaries are there. And the TRS reserve, so the reality is we can move that spot into either the establishment to help start going on the hopefully established May request for a capital reserve account to do that. That could assist in there. And as I think you were about to say, Chad, is some school districts don't hold for tax certiorari matters very much. If it gets to that big, then you can bond that at the board table. So
Okay.
like, look, that's enough, and we're just going to go ahead and bond it, because we can't keep saving them, because we can't the next year just create more widgets and generate more money. It's like, we got enough saving from a historical perspective that we should be good, but at some point in time, we'd have to kind of bond that from the board table, probably.
Okay. So later on in our budget discussions, we'll be
Yep.
talking about that.
Yep.
Okay.
And so the next piece, we hit that one. And then here's a little bit about the debt service, Chris, so if you don't mind hitting that one, and we'll,
Yep, so earlier I mentioned about the building aid that's kind of falling off for next year because of that project that was aided over 15 years. That's that top 2006 to 2009 building project. So we still have the debt. You can see that we still have debt payments that we're issuing on that, but that's the building aid that's falling off for that project. We've also outlined the other two projects that we've recently done, the $13.6 million project and then the $10.7 million safety and security project. And then at the very bottom, we have the $8.9 million energy performance contract that'll be coming online as we look to borrow those funds probably this January, assuming that's when when SCSD approves the project. So at that point, you see that it's the payment's half of what the next 2 years is. That's because we'll only be making one payment next year. We make two payments usually every 6 months, so we'll be on a cycle of a January and July payment, but we won't make that first payment until January of 2023. So it'll just be one payment in next year's budget.
And when does the estimated savings start kicking in? Does that start 23, 24? Because this is supposed to be
Yep.
was it net neutral?
So again, assuming the construction takes place this summer with the bigger items such as like the boilers, and then all the lighting starts happening maybe this spring, the savings we should start to see immediately. So we'll get into a more depth conversation of this at the next budget presentation for the non-instructional. So with some of the utilities, we'd be looking at, say, a 30 to 40% reduction in our utilities. But from a budgeting perspective, we're not going to see a 30 to 40% reduction. One, because the costs of some of these utilities, oil has gone up quite a bit compared to what it was last year. So what this is going to help us do, where maybe we won't see the actual dollar amount savings from budget to budget, but if we didn't do this energy performance contract,
It would just be going up.
increase would have gone up much more.
That cost avoidance
Cost
would be,
avoidance,
yeah.
yes. But we'll talk more about that in the next presentation as we
Got
get the non-instructional side.
Also like to drop just a little bit on this slide as we come forward. If you look at the calendaring here, so 24, 25, so in the spring of 25, at that vote, we would anticipate requesting the next bond request for the paving and all those other big pieces. The reason for that is some of the other bonds, they'll come off 2 years after that. So when that payment comes off, we'll bring this next one on, because basically from when we ask, it takes about 2 years before we actually start drawing that money and actually having to go ahead and start paying that. So we'll spend a little more time on this, but you can see that like they have 5 years left, some of those bonds. 22, 23, 23, 24, 24, 25, 25, 26, 26, 27. We'll ask them this year, so when this one comes off, this new bond comes back on. So we're trying to feather one off and bring one back on. It seems like, oh, why do you do it so early? But it just takes that long from the ask to the actual design, development, put up, bidding, and starting construction to when we actually, then the first year, you don't make a payment on that first month. It's the next year when you make that payment. So that's why we'll spend a little bit more time talking about when this bond comes off, we'll be bonding again, and that would be for, again, the majority of it's going to, a good portion of it be for the pavement. As you remember, that 5-year capital plan that was mentioned before, there's a whole chunk of money and needs in there for that area. And we'll be back onto some of the roofing areas and some of the HVAC, but that'll be the next big piece. But it'll kind of, one goes off, one comes on, so they just kind of equalize each other. That's the intent. So it's not a net gain, it's just one's off, one's on,
But just for our sake and the community's sake, whenever there's a bond proposal, there's some felt need that needs to be addressed in the
Yes.
school, and it has to be those specific. So for example, if you have pavement, the bond can only address those specific, it can't be swapped for anything else.
That would be in the question specifically, and we'll have obviously a better idea in 3 years exactly, but that's definitely going to be a big part of it, for sure. Oh, and also as well, when we come later about thinking about the capital reserve account establishing in May this year, again, that's our own internal savings account. We're doing that, we're putting savings, we'll also say in the community, here are the things that we're looking to do with that savings account. So once we get it established, we save, then we got to ask for it to come out. So
But some projects are too expensive to cover with reserves like that.
correct. So it's kind of, and this is on the next slide, just trying to think about the different methods that we have. Our reserve account, our repair account, and then a bond account. Some will be a partnership between two, some may be isolated in one. So it's the combination. Those are kind of our three funding mechanisms. And you can see, for example, the bond is on the district-wide paving and concrete work. Another area, just thinking about our learning spaces proper. High school, the original plant, 68, year I was born kind of thing. So it's looked a little worn. Hopefully I'm not doing too bad, but it definitely needs a little bit of a uptake and be a more modern experience for students learning. Learning has changed significantly. So that's a piece we want to, we're not talking about knocking down a building, building a new building, but we need to kind of go back. It's like, the 70s kitchen eventually had to be replaced to something all new. If you look at this building and you go to kind of the new wing that the school built, and you go to the historical, there's some updatings we have to look at. So there could be some bond work in there. It could also help a little bit with capital reserve. So it's just one of those things we desire to, as we can, like things on a capital reserve account, like the furniture we have here this evening. This is much more conducive to, a board meeting in the shape of this. Doesn't seem like anything, but you do this for hundreds of classrooms, it adds up pretty quick. Well, we'd rather do a capital reserve out of that so we're not bonding equipment or, this kind of stuff for 15 years. So that's where we like to put as much as we can for purchases like that. And a reserve account, it's just our savings account, we spend it, and it's like, okay, versus a bond, payment for 20, 25 years, yeah, that makes sense, or a roof or boilers. So that's how we try to balance between those. Next area just, again, is the infrastructure needs, and then we're talking about that reserve fund that I was just mentioning. So what we're looking at now is you have to kind of put a length of time and not to exceed. So we're suggesting a $10 million value there with over 10 years. So I'll go ahead and just, I think we've got coming up here pretty soon, an example of our history. So here's the last one we did. It was a $5 million request from a capital reserve account. Again, that's every year at the end of the year, you have positive fund balance, and you start putting more away into your savings account. And so what we paid out of that was the security vestibule at the high school, for example, the turf fields at the high school, resurfacing, the fitness center at the high school, and part of, not the whole thing, but part of our safe security project. So that's what we did, those $5 million. We set it up front, this is what we're gonna do. We saved the money, we asked, can we have it out? I think it was 2 draws that we actually took it out. We took it out for like the turf field and security vestibule, and then we took it out for the balance of security project. So the same piece is here. Can we reestablish a savings account? We now will go ahead and start putting those dollars away to save for some projects will fully come out of there, others will be partials like I described before. So that would, again, just allow establish that kind of reserve account. Then I'll just speak a little bit more on the usage of some of those funds as we look at the capital reserve moving forward in that area. So a couple of things very clearly. I think we mentioned actually this pre-COVID. We had some conversations with our facilities areas. One particular of those is I would say would be tennis. You may be familiar, we do not have tennis courts on the schools proper. We have a great long restricted with the town. We use those town courts. The reality is that having tennis in our schools athletically is good, but from a physical education standpoint, I would say would be really, really important so that all children can have a part of their physical education experience going through. 1,100 kids now would have that be part of their lifelong being an active person. That one is really, really key. Softball, if you've seen our softball field, it needs to be really replaced and refreshed. And so if you have been to any softball fields around our areas of late, just basic things like, a permanent fence and actually an area that is really pretty much just used for softball. If you know our softball field, it's a playground also for the Primrose kids, also where we put the tent at graduation. And it's not part of where we would see with our other sports. So we're looking at 3 things then when we're looking at these. One is safety of our student athletes. The second one is on par with the other sports within our school district itself. And then as best as we can on par with the other communities that we play. So again, if you go to our fields today, and you mentioned you got turf fields out there, well, they're used for lots of things, with soccer and lacrosse and football and field hockey and things like that. That's a pretty amazing surface. We don't have that for tennis, nor do we have it for our softball. Baseball, good space. They've got, it's good diamond, it's a good shape. They got some drainage issues and some of those kind of things, so that can be handled. But that's an area we're talking about. And then as I mentioned before about kind of those classroom renovations and updating with some of the furniture in some of those areas and stuff like that. And then disregard paving, that's a part we hope to get a little bit out of here and then do the balance over there on the large bond itself when that's in 5 years.
You
We should be able to see some of these when we do a facilities tour in the spring.
Yep, we'll
So
get you
that
walking through the
we'll be able to
spring.
see exactly what they're
Yep.
talking about needing the funds for.
Yep.
I was curious to know if those classroom renovations you talked, Ray, about the high school.
Yes.
I'm wondering about the heating, cooling system that we've talked about a couple of times at the table.
Yeah, so
That's
with
something.
those, the energy performance contract, that's already a way, that'll be a really, really big improvement. There'll always be a little bit after that, some of the HVAC stuff, but that's gonna be a significant improvement for us, yeah.
Thank you.
And then even the lighting will just be a much better conducive lighting for kids and things like that, so that's gonna be a nice improvement, yeah. And I'll, Chris, just kind of take us out with the forthcoming meetings we've got and some of the budget topics.
Sure. So just in January, we'll certainly have some more information, maybe some concrete numbers from the state on some of the numbers that we're still waiting for. But we'll have a non-instructional budget session on January 18th. And then the following month in February, that's when we get into our instructional budget presentation. And then March 1st is our first one where we combine the two. March 15th is more of a summary of where we're at with the budget. And then April 19th is where we're going to be looking for the board to adopt the budget. And then May 3rd is public budget hearing. And then again, May 17th is for the budget vote and trustee election. And that's also where we'd look to be having the voters vote on the establishment of the capital reserve.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris.
Thank you.
Nice job keeping it under 5 minutes.
I think my watch died or something.
But we did talk too.
And for a compliment, I like the way that you equitably treated all of the sports across the school district. Thank you.
All
Sandwich, right?
So we're all set with that. And next we have calendar, right?
Yes. So pull that up. I think I have it up here. So
That's my-
calendar is very similar to this year, very much straightforward again. So just on the bookends there, again, as we know, the end of the school year is pretty much determined by our regents in New York. So that is where we're told there, basically what that's happening. And we do have school starting before the Labor Day. Again, as long as we're in September with children, that's okay. It's just we don't bring children in August. So that piece helps in there. And you can go ahead and see the days in there. One of the things that I would say, again, we've got the February and then the April, and then the May has the Friday there. Much like this year, just a reminder is that the state is allowing us to go ahead for this year, use virtual days if we need them for snow.
Nice.
So as we did last year, if we do have snow for the first 3 days, we'll say they're traditional snow days. As you know, when we have snow, if there's enough to close, there's often problems with power and all those kind of things. If we do need a fourth day, instead of taking away from, days that families would be off and things like that, we'll convert those into a digital remote learning day. So we'll have, a couple of days to say, hey, it's there. Oh, the next one's going to be e-learning. So then we'll be able to do that. I don't know what they're going to do for next year, but for this year it's in place. And so that's the approach we'll take, just like we did last year.
Okay. So would the schedule of the day would be like I know when we had full remote learning, the schedule is different. So in this case, they would follow the same school hours, and
I think that's typically
if we
what
had to do it.
the emergency plan was last year when you've got singletons like that.
Yeah. Okay.
Unless it's a large storm and there's no.
And there's no power.
Exactly. Not that we've ever had any of those before.
Oh, no.
So we lost, I think, a spring break one of those years and stuff like that. So if it gets to that point, it's like all bets are off, and then we got to kind of start pulling days back. So
We're not adopting this yet. This is just
just the draft, and just if there's anything in there, this way communities get a look at it, and teachers and principals and everybody get a chance to look at it and stuff. So.
And if we don't start, if we decided to start after Labor Day, then those 3 days, I mean, that's still part of our required total instructional time. So we'd have to find somewhere else and some of the other breaks and reduce the length of those.
So some of the green ones would have, sorry, Paul, I keep leaning away from my microphone. I'm really messing you up, aren't I? So the green would have to go to white, a couple of those, and that's basically how you'd have to do that,
Right.
make up those days.
Because I know some school districts don't start till after Labor Day, but they also don't have a February break.
Right. Yeah.
Well, a lot of schools also don't take those long weekends around a lot of the holiday weekends the way that we do.
Or the
They make up
long
in different
Memorial
ways.
Day.
Yeah.
And
It allows them to go all the way through the end of the summer, technically, and
Right.
start after.
And that's where, when we look at the calendar, we're all underneath the same requirements by the state, the 180 days there.
Yeah.
And so that's basically where everybody builds it, and each district's a little bit different. So,
Okay.
thank you, Heidi.
All right. Okay, so we are moving on now to financial reports. We are in acceptance of the warrant report, statement of revenues, treasurer's report, and budget status report. And then the next thing is the approval of the meeting minutes. Be it resolved that the Board of Education, having received copies of the minutes of the meetings of November 2nd, 2021, and November 16th, 2021, hereby approves the same.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Okay. All right. Next item for board action is the personnel consent agenda. Be it resolved that the Board of Education, upon recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, hereby approves the attached personnel agenda.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? All right, and then the CSE CPSC meeting recommendations. Be it resolved that the Board of Education, having received copies of the recommendations of the meetings as listed on the attached memo, hereby approves the same.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? All right, moving along. Business consent agenda. Be it resolved that the Board of Education, upon recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, hereby approves the attached business agenda.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Do we need any discussion? Was that
Just a couple items maybe just to highlight is the acceptance of the 2021 internal audit report, which was done on capital projects. That was done purposely as we were in the midst of that $13.6 million capital project and the $10.7 million safety and security project. So we had them take a look at that. They, our internal auditor met with the audit committee a couple weeks ago to go over the report and any recommendations and findings that they had. They're addressed in the corrective action plan. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but they were very minor recommendations that they had, so I was
They were
happy.
very minor. It was,
Yeah.
it was, and I guess as the accountants go, it's acceptable, and that's about as good as you can get.
And the compliments go to Chris on that for
Yes.
having that very tidy and
Thank you.
in order.
Yes.
Then there's also a budget amendment on this business agenda here, and that is for the potential cost to add a water treatment system at the intermediate school. There was and there's also an emergency declaration and secret resolution on the consent agenda for this as well. With the emergency declaration, it allows us to move forward with the project without going through the formal bidding process. We were required to remedy the situation within 120 days, according to the letter that we received from the Department of Health. Again, we've communicated out to SIS staff and families. There's no safety concerns with the water there. It's just that the limits that are set by New York State are extremely low, and then the latest test result that came back for one of the items in there was slightly above that limit. So the Department of Health is now just having us install a filtration system to remedy that situation. So that's what we're going to be looking to move forward with. Our architects are currently designing that project and hopes to submit to the Department of Health within the next couple of weeks.
And those same measures were measured across buildings, and Primrose was the only spot where there was
The
any
intermediate school.
concern.
Yeah.
SIS.
And sorry.
Yep.
Any reason for that? You know the source?
Not that we know of, but apparently they have seen an uptick of this specific item that's being found in a few other places as well. But no,
it's the same contaminant that they have at the town wells over by the Elephant Hotel, I think, right?
but I don't know a reason why it has happened. So, but we'll look to remedy the situation as quickly as possible. So.
Okay. All right. So we're set to vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Okay. Next item is the ski merger. Be it resolved that upon recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, the Somers Board of Education does hereby approve the merger of the varsity boys and girls ski team of Somers High School and John J. Cross River High School for the 2021-22 season as per the merger application.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Okay. Next is the emergency declaration treatment for the PFOA in the domestic water well. So there's a long statement there. I'm just going to read the beginning of it. It says, whereas the Somers Central School District has received a notice violation from Westchester County Department of Health dated October 13th, 2021, stating the analysis of potable water samples taken from the domestic water supply to Somers Intermediate School exceeded New York State maximum contamination level of PFOA, and the school district is required to provide treatment for the removal of PFOA acid within 120 days of the date of notice. And so the rest of it is as presented.
You skipped over 2 words in there.
Oh,
Right?
Yes, what were they? What were those words? Yes, so the rest as presented. So we need to, this is basically the emergency declaration because the water contamination has to be rectified as soon as possible, right? And we don't have time to can't take the time to do the normal bid process.
Yep.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Wait, I'm
Oh,
sorry, we
wait.
have to do roll call.
Oh, roll call,
roll
right,
call on.
right. I had that on here.
Do that again, Joe?
Is that because it's an emergency
Aye.
declaration?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so we have
We
to.
know, yeah, normally this and the secret one we have to do.
Okay.
Okay, Heidi Camporeri,
Aye.
Chadwick Olson,
Aye.
Ife Chang is absent, Joseph Mara,
Aye.
Lindsay Portnoy,
Aye.
Mary Rose Joseph,
Aye.
Nick Mancini.
Aye.
Okay, resolution passes.
Okay, the next item is for treatment of water well SEQRA resolution. And that's another long one, that it's, whereas the Board of Education of the Somers Central School District is required to treat a found contaminant in domestic water well that provides water service at Somers Intermediate School, as presented below. Is there a motion?
So moved.
So, oh, sorry.
Second.
I have a question. How often is this checked? Are these measures checked? Is this because somebody called and said, "Hey, come and do a test," or?
Oh, the actual water testing itself, those are done, I want to say quarterly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And so this exact measure was taken approximately 3 months ago.
3 months
And
prior.
this is a novel finding from 3 months ago?
This specific test was taken sometime in the summer, but then when we got the notification, it was a couple months after that. But the test prior to that was within the limits. So there was
Somebody
nothing-
from the county come and get a sample, or do we just send them a sample? How does it work?
For this, we have a lot of different water testing. For this specific one, I'm not sure if the county's doing it or if it's our own staff that's doing it, or someone from one of the labs that is coming to do it. I'm not exactly sure on this specific one.
Has it been tested again since? So all this has to be done based on one water test, or was it repeated?
It was repeated, and that one too was above the limit still.
Okay.
So
But
there
still
was a
well-
confirmation, there was a secondary test,
Yes.
is what you're getting at?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But that this was the first time that this was found in this water?
Correct, yep.
Okay, and we do a roll call for this one too.
We do. Heidi Camporeri,
Aye.
Chadwick Olson,
Aye.
Ife Chang is absent, Joseph Mara,
Aye.
Lindsay Portnoy,
Aye.
Mary Rose Joseph,
Aye.
Nick Mancini.
Aye.
Resolution passes. Great. Thank you.
Okay. That passes. And then now we move on to policies. We have a couple of policies for first reading. I'll just read be it resolved that upon recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, the Board of Education of the Somers Central School District does hereby accept the following policies for first reading. They are listed there.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Second?
Okay, and before we go ahead with that, I just wanted to, does anybody have any comment? I had a couple of questions and comments on some of them. I don't know if anybody else does. My first one had been, what was it? Oh, with the public comment at board meetings. I didn't know, I gotta pull that one up, but we've set a sort of an overall time limit. I know there are several changes in there that seem like they were recommended based on NYSBA. I don't know if we wanted to put anything in there about the specific time limit per speaker. We always have that opportunity to put that in there. I didn't know if we wanted that as part of our policy
The only thing,
or not.
the only thing I would suggest on that, I know that we have an overall policy. Would it make sense to get a raise of hands of people who are going to comment, rather than just limiting people to 3 minutes? There's only 3 people, then give them 10 minutes each. I don't know if that makes sense to do something like that.
It'd be like having them sign up ahead of time and say, I'm.
Well, no,
going
just have them raise their hands. And before, if you intend on commenting, you want to allocate the time, so please raise your hand.
But is that binding
Yeah,
to
but-
somebody? Like,
Yeah, what
the
if somebody
question is
decides
someone else
last
wants
minute to
have a
speak
comment?
up, or?
Yeah. I mean, they should be able to get their point across in 3 minutes. You
Yeah.
know, if
Sorry?
not, they should be able to get their point across in 3 minutes to let us know what's going on, right? And then if it requires further conversation, I mean, it's not a conversation, it's a one-way, introduction to what issues or things that might be coming up that we're not aware of. It should be probably taken offline.
Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying about the sign up, because even if we're limiting it to 3 minutes, still you have have an idea and know who's going to talk when. I know there are districts that do that. They have a sign-up process as they come in. We historically haven't had a large number of public comments unless there's a particular issue that comes up. So that's something as a board now we have to, the policy committee looked at it, but as the board, if we wanted to add something else to change some procedure to it, we could. This would be the opportunity. And I think I would kind of like to see it mentioned right in the policy that we request the 3 minute
I agree
per
with Nick, I
speaker,
think.
because
Yeah.
I do think that's enough time to convey
Yes.
the concerns, and then I can follow up if as needed.
And the purpose of the public comment is to just pose a question or a comment. It's not a back and forth, so I do think 3 minutes is plenty to be able to articulate that. So and I think it's helpful to have it as part of the policy.
Yeah, and we've added the sign-up sheet where they put their name and they put contact
we can follow up
information,
as
so that
appropriate.
allows that follow-up.
You know, I'm going to respectfully disagree on that, because I think us who are used to speaking in public for the most part, but I think for a lot of people who are not, they may not be as succinct and articulate, and I think if it's an issue, especially if you have people here, a lot of people in the room, I just think it's bad optics if they nominate 1 or 2 people to speak to cut them off. Oh, you got your 3 minutes, that's it. I think that if it's a lot of people in the room, there should be a procedure in place to say, okay, we have 10 speakers, therefore you're each getting 3 minutes, or we have 4 speakers and there's 40 people in the room, you're each getting, 9 minutes, whatever it is.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, Joe. I think that people should be able to say what it is that is of concern. And I also think that both to Nick's point that you can get up and you can make a comment. It's really not for discourse. It's really about saying and putting on the public record something with, that you're uncomfortable with. It's not about sharing a whole, dissertation on why you're upset, but really just publicly stating, your comments or concerns or congratulations. But so from my perspective, this is just my perspective, I think it's hugely beneficial to limit it just in terms of being timely and respectful of everyone's time. And I also think, to your point, Mary Rose, when somebody gets up and says something, it might prompt something in you, and you're like, oh goodness, I want to get up and I'd like to share something as well. And I know that this is something else we might talk about. If somebody has said something that you agree with, here is lovely, but 17 people don't have to get up and regurgitate the same thing. So I don't know how to balance that, because everyone should be able to speak for certain, but there has to be a better way. I also take issue with the striking of the 2 different comments. I always thought that the benefit of having a comment at the top of the session is that if community members want to come and say something, make a comment publicly about something that will be on the agenda, we would have the opportunity to be able to hear from people who we're representing before we have to discuss these items, and then at the end to be able to say something about something separate. So I noticed that was removed. I did talk about it in a policy meeting. I feel strongly that there should be 2 for those reasons.
And I guess my thought would be, I think it comes up more at for workshop meetings where we're not deciding on anything. It tends to be more of a discussion based that in those meetings we may not need the comment at the beginning.
We might not need them, but people in the
having the
community
space
might
for
have
it.
better questions that we would have to ask about the content. For instance, if there's something that's coming up about the high school, you both have kids in the high school, so you might know. But if we didn't have someone on the board who had a kid in the high school, they would ask a better question than I would. And that's great. We should invite that before the meeting so that those people who have children in that space, right? Some of the folks don't have children in the district. Sorry, I keep talking.
No, I'm saying academically, you're right, but I think when people come here and there's a lot of people here, it's
Yeah.
emotional.
Yeah, you're right.
And I think that has to be addressed. I mean, if you look at it, but who, honestly, how many people who are coming here are looking at the agenda for the most part? Not many. They're coming here because there's some emotional issue, and that's when you get a bigger group. And I think it just got to be handled a little differently, because if someone's speaking and all of a sudden they're cut off, and they are speaking for a bunch of people and they're cut off at 3 minutes, I just think that's bad optics for the board. It's just going to get people ticked off. That's all. And like I said, if they're here, a lot of people here, it's an emotional issue. So they're not really looking at the agenda before. They're coming because something sparked their interest. Sometimes it is related to the agenda, like probably before you guys were here and we had the veterans exemption. The veterans knew that was on the thing and they were here. That's not the norm, though.
Actually, but as far as boards go, other boards, virtually every other school board that I've talked to, and it's been basically all the ones in the area through some conversations, do have a time limit per speaker. It's just kind of the standard practice for efficiency of meetings, and also because it helps not get into that situation where you may cut off somebody when they start going really long and then not somebody else, and are you favoring one opinion over another? It's just consistent across the board. Try to get your statements out in here in this period of time. I mean, and we don't have a time, there are actually some boards that have timers up. So when you're speaking and you're looking at this timer telling you how much time you have, I don't want to have to go there. I like to be able to let people finish their thought, and that's why I think you've seen between last year and this year, like some, grace period there of, okay, you're coming to an end, let it, it's not a strict, okay, stop mid-sentence.
I know, I think Joe makes a point that if community members come up and they want to share their voice, we want to give them their space, but I wonder if a 10-minute time slot is appropriate for a board meeting. Maybe we need another venue for community members to share their voice, but I wonder if it's a board public comment session. I don't think it is.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, presidential debates don't even give 10 minutes, in a heated conversation there.
Sorry, Nick,
You have a presidential debate, hey, you have 2 minutes to answer this question, right? And they're talking about a topic there, and they're getting their point out. Now, look, they're well crafted on it, but again, I just think there does need to be some kind of structure here. We have seen at board meetings, not only ours, but other ones, look, hey, I also want to prevent some of the grandstanding or someone coming and just, hey, look, I'm on camera right now, and let me stand here for 30 minutes because no one else is talking, and I'm going to talk and be on camera, and I'm the only one, so I'll have 30 minutes to get my point out.
Well, that, agreed. I mean, you don't want to give somebody 30 minutes if they're the only person.
But how do I tell that person, no, they have the same right to talk?
You could say, look, depending on how many people here, you have a range of 3 minutes to 5 minutes, and that's it.
Yeah, but what if 5 more people just decide that they want to stand up because they say, hey, that doesn't represent my perspective? Now, all of a sudden, we go from 30 minutes to 75 minutes of public comment because someone's upset that they heard this one. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's a snowball of problems.
Yeah, man, my suggestion, let's do 3 minutes and be like, hey, look, it's, so-and-so from the town, look, let's follow up after the meeting, or why don't you set up a meeting with Ray? But that's the avenue at post 3 minutes to get some of that and talk through some of those emotions there and continue that conversation, and more in a conversational format where we could respond back.
Well, but I would disagree. I think that we're not talking through the emotions in 3 minutes. Somebody is presenting their thoughts in 3 minutes, and there's no talking through anything.
Correct.
This is what I'd like to share. Here it is, and here's my email. Let's be in touch.
And 3 minutes takes the bias away from the board, right?
Yes.
The concern, I might say, okay, hey, we've heard enough. You can end at 3 minutes. Well, you might sit there and say, you know what, they could have 5 minutes, right? Because I didn't hear enough. But let's take that bias out so no one's making that decision. Let's just keep it at 3.
And there is always the option, like we have in the policy right now, that we say 30 minutes, but if the board agrees as a whole, we can go beyond that. So if you have somebody that comes up and they have something very urgent and compelling that they're talking about that requires a lot of detail, we could as a board say, this is a real concern. We need to hear more and decide on that in a very particular kind of case. I mean, it's not like, but I mean, I think generally we would stick to the 3, but if it was some kind of emergency or like earth-shattering something, that you needed more information.
More people and there's some varied points of view that the people are giving is very individual, and maybe there is a case that we want to extend it to make sure that people have their chance to speak publicly. But yeah, I mean, we have to balance getting our business done in a timely manner. We have to balance, we want to hear or need to hear from the public. But, we have to be respectful of everybody's time and not just letting them.
So it's sounding to me like, I mean, we can keep talking through this, but it seems like the overall consensus is that the board would like to see a time limit per speaker included in the policy. I know we're not 100% in agreement, and sometimes we're not all going to be, but we have to reach a point of consensus.
And this is your first touchstone.
And it's our first look at it.
Right.
So it will come back again for a second reading, and would we like to see, before the second reading, the 3 minute per speaker request added in.
One other thing too, just going away from that for a second, I noticed at the bottom of the, there's some references to court cases and things of that nature. And this matter of Martin allows the boards to limit non-residents to speaking. I don't know if we have anything on that, or I don't remember seeing that when I looked at this.
We
don't
took
have
out at the parts that sort of limited it to residents.
Okay. I mean, but do we want to limit it to residents is the point.
In terms of people who are paying taxes in town, and so
Yeah, I
therefore
mean-
they should be the only ones having a voice and how
So
the
Joe,
town
I
is being
think,
governed.
I apologize, Lindsay, that I think there's some differing opinion on this, can you or can you not? And I think there's like some low-level court cases, I believe they've done that. There's been, I think, some commissioner of education choice that you need to. So I think the latest thing that we're hearing from our council is that you can't restrain that from any non-residents. Perhaps I own a business in the town.
Yep.
And I'm like, oh, I want to come and talk about my business because it's right next to the school, but I don't happen to live here. So that's a piece that I'm not
If I
sure
had-
exactly
but-
why.
Yeah, I mean, thank you, but if I had no connection whatsoever, like no business,
Right.
no kids, like I live in a neighboring town.
Yep.
Like, I think we had somebody here at one meeting who was just part of an organization,
Yes.
wanted to
a
speak
few
to an
times.
issue.
Yep.
If they don't live in the town or they don't have a business in the town, I think we would have the right to,
But if town
To limit them.
residents wanted them to come and share.
I'll check it.
their views.
Nate.
Like, that's
I mean,
where-
they're
that's where-
citing an EDR here, which is, I think, is an Education Department regulation or some type of internal case from 1992. Why is that still on the bottom here? I don't know. Maybe it just never came out.
Right.
But, you know, I don't know if that was overturned. So,
Well, I don't, on the board, I would not want to be in a situation where I'm trying to figure out some history or demographics of the person speaking. I mean,
you don't have, no, you don't have to. You just have to state it.
Yeah.
They just say, look, what, you know, who, are you town resident? You have a business in the town? That's it. If they say no, then you have the right not to allow them to speak.
I don't think we can ask people to divulge that information before they're allowed to just.
We can ask if they're, we can
could.
ask
But
them
they
to
live-
say if they're resident or not. I'm not comfortable with saying they can't speak because any of the trainings that I've participated in, they really don't recommend that.
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't feel.
But they do say, you absolutely can ask, are you a resident or not? So that you have that frame of reference as you're listening to them.
Yeah.
I mean, some school districts have multiple towns within their district. So they ask, you know, specifically what town and what area you're in. It's not uncommon to ask where somebody, you know, what town somebody resides in.
Right.
I mean, it needs to be a topic about our school district, our school system. And so if somebody's, you know, just some random place talking about something else, you know, that's something that we would not need to hear about.
But to your point, Chad, people know that they can come and they can speak, and if they have additional information, like Nick said, send an email, make a meeting,
Right.
let's have a follow-up. You know, present it for public comment, so the world, it's on public record, and let's follow up later.
Yes, no, that's how I feel too.
Okay. So are we going to leave it as is in terms of specifying residency, census? Anything else that you want to see changed, or you're overall okay with moving?
Well, I know Lindsay, you wanted to keep in there as a mention of 2 different time periods, public comment periods.
Yes, I mean,
I think maybe the exception might be is like at a workshop, we wouldn't, we would elect probably to not need one before.
I disagree. I think about the workshop that we recently had with the middle years.
Yeah.
And we saw all of the incredible work that the teachers and the kids have been doing. As a parent of a child who's experiencing that great program, if I saw that was on the agenda and I wasn't sitting here, I'd be standing there. And I would say, I know you're going to hear about this program tonight, and I want to share with you my experience with it before you hear about it, because I think it's important to hear from the community.
But does that make a difference whether you hear from them before or after?
It's
'Cause they still would
related
have a
to the
chance to share
content,
it.
and so if you don't want to be here till 9:15 at night, you can say it at the beginning because it's related to the content, and then you can go home.
Is there a
and put your
drawback
kids
of
to
having
sleep.
2 options?
Yeah.
Right? Like, I just think it's contextually relevant before you talk about the content.
Okay.
I mean,
Maybe
disagreeing
we
is
have
fine.
it that we can, but we don't, like, is there a way to word it so that we have the right to not? If there's a particular meeting going on where we, like tonight, for example, we were doing the youth awards, the athletic recognitions.
Yes, yes.
So had we ended up with 20 people here that wanted to do public comment, we would have had all the athletes here waiting before that. And maybe there wasn't a particular item that we needed to hear. I mean, and actually tonight there were a lot of things that we were voting on and deciding, so
Yeah.
it would have been a relevant place to have it, but.
Well, but then you put it like we did last year a couple of times, right?
Move it
So
after.
Ray would move it and say,
Right.
let the kids go, and then let them go home and, you know, study and have dinner, whatever.
Okay.
Right? And so I think we have to be flexible,
Yeah.
is the point.
Yes.
Right.
I agree.
Okay, so how do we move forward with this particular policy? I'm okay with leaving it with 2. I don't know where everybody feels on that. I would like to see I personally would like to see the time limit put in.
I like the
I would
time
like
limit
both.
because then nobody is the bad guy for enforcing a time limit, right? Like, I don't want you to have to be the one that's always cutting folks off, right? I don't want any of us to have to be.
Right.
Well, it sets an expectation. You come to speak and you know that, okay, I know I need to try to be concise, and that's just an appropriate and respectful way to communicate.
Okay.
I'm for 2 public comment sessions and being flexible if kids are there.
Sure.
Yeah.
And moving it. And I'm for time restrictive individual public comments.
Second.
Okay.
Yep.
Same. All in
I'm for
favor?
restricting time limits, but just doing a poll before people start speaking and base the time limits upon how many people want to speak that evening, with a range of a minimum and a maximum. So if you have, you know, only one person who's going to speak, well, you can have 5 minutes, but, you know, we're not just going to cut you off at 3 because you're the only person here. I think that's reasonable. And if people have problems later and there's more time in the 30 minutes, then fine, let them speak. If not, no, if we limit it to 30 minutes, you didn't sign up before, you're out of luck. So that's my feeling. You can still set a time limit, you just don't have to do it, you know, before the meeting every time. I mean, you have to be flexible depending on what's on the agenda, how people feel about it, how many people show up. That's how I feel about it.
So are we comfortable saying that everyone seems to be in agreement that flexibly having 2 sessions before and after for comment? And by the way, I like that we changed the top of it. It says public comment.
Comment,
At
yeah.
board meeting, not participation. And can we just say 3 minutes and say unless there's an extraneous circumstance?
I prefer to stick with 3 minutes because when we say extraneous, like, again, there's a judgment call that happens. I'm okay with extending the 30 minutes if there's a pressing issue where we find there's 50 people here and we need 50, you know, 150. I mean, I'm not saying I hope that never happens, but that I'm okay with, but not changing the
Yeah,
individual. Because then it's like, again, you're stuck to deciding every single time.
Okay.
And Nick's point, there's bias. You're right.
Okay.
I agree.
All right, so I guess we'll have to make some of these changes to it before it comes back
Yep,
to
we'll
us for
bring
the
it
next time.
at the next policy meeting. so.
Okay, all right. Other than that, the only thing I had noticed, I don't know if anybody else has anything on any of the policies, there was one that didn't have a dollar amount, the 1,800, the donations, gifts, and grants to the district. There was a spot where it had, like, it's an insert amount here,
Right.
so I didn't know what that amount was.
Oh, I think we're just going to remove that.
Oh, okay.
We're not going to put an actual amount, I think. I think that's what we're just.
No limit. You could donate whatever you want.
No, that was,
Like any amount of gift.
We talked about
As long
that.
as it goes to
No, we
the
did
Nick.
talk
We
about
did
we
talk
did
about
talk
that.
about that.
Sign
And
checks
the
to Nick
question was
Manzi.
about an amount, and then the conversation was about holiday gifts and if it was an aggregate dollar amount versus a donation to the school.
Right.
In kind. So, yeah.
right, because if it's a huge amount, I mean, that should come and it should be accepted.
So it
here
was just
probably,
a
but-
period after the word board, period. Just gifts and donations having value less than whatever. Just about donations to the board, period, to the school.
You know what, I think we left that meeting with an open question and maybe to find, and maybe, I don't know, Ray, if you could find out, is there kind of a standard accepted dollar amount where you would be able to accept that?
I looked.
Yeah, so we didn't find too much. I think Nancy did look. Some it doesn't happen too typically, but you may get a large donation, like a nice piano or something like that, a piece of equipment that's actually like got a lot of money value to it. And so that's the piece that, you know, with a gift like that, that, you know, would be maybe contribute to school. We've had musical instruments before contribute to the school and things, and there's a value to them. There's some specific values that look at, I don't know if it's in this one, Nancy, maybe you can remember, or, but to like teachers proper and things like that. There is a dollar value on that component. So this is more as the district
Yeah, the way I'm reading this, I mean, well, the dollar amount is Ray could take the gift without going through us if it's under a certain amount, so.
So I'm
Right,
actually,
pick $100.
I actually think
Whatever.
that when we were talking about this, because this sentence says donations having a value less than,
Right.
I think one of the conversations we had was that sometimes people are in kindness giving things that are not of necessarily utility to the district. And so at that point, you could or you could not accept it, right? And so I think we were still having a conversation about what that dollar amount is. Am I remembering correctly that conversation?
Yes.
That's all addressed
Yes,
further
that's correct.
down, that, you know, being able to decline a.
Right.
That's different, that's a
This just
different
sounds like-
issue.
This just sounds like,
Right.
this is specifying right there, can Ray accept a gift, or does the board have to do so? And where's that cutoff?
Right.
Are we
I think
saying
$250 would be
$500,
reasonable.
under $500, he can do it and we don't have to know anything about
Sold.
it, or?
Sorry.
Or just any.
Yeah, as I'm processing through with you there again, even tonight on the agenda, you'll see there was a donation of some equipment that was there, so that comes forth to the board. So it seems like a very reasonable, small number. So,
$250.
Yeah,
yep.
and that was a
Something like that.
$500 value,
Yeah,
I think,
exactly.
that item.
Yep.
It didn't say for the binder what that was, the value
Right,
of that one was.
right.
So do we have a number there?
So I think 250 is the number I'm making it. Yep.
Perfect.
That's fine.
Okay,
Great.
Thanks.
okay, great. All right, any other questions, comments on the policies? Sorry, I know it was late, but I had to do this. Okay, so we have to
Yes, so
vote on if
procedurally,
we,
how do we vote on
yeah,
these?
so how do we,
Oh,
when
this
we
is just
need to
the
make
first
changes?
reading.
This is the first.
Oh, it
one.
is.
Okay,
We're
so
not
we don't have to do
accepting
anything.
them.
Okay, got it.
Yep.
All right, oh, so we didn't have to move on it. All right. And then,
But you do have to vote.
oh, we do have to vote.
To vote to
Okay.
accept them as for first meeting.
On the first
All
reading.
in favor of the first reading?
Okay, so that we've done the first reading and make the change in the first.
So the next time, we'll bring it back for a second reading.
Got it. Okay, so we had the motions already, so all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained. Okay. And then the policies reviewed, be it resolved that upon recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education, having done a review of board policies, does hereby accept the following policy to remain as is with no changes required at this time. Policy 1000, community relations goals.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Good, and that's a helpful one that the communications policy committee can keep in mind also. All right, and then policies suspended. Be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education hereby accepts the following policy for suspension: 6255 gifts.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm just
Was
confused.
there a question on that? Sorry, any discussion?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Is this just because it's going to be replaced by the other policy? Is that the
Exactly.
idea?
It's
Okay.
addressed
Yep.
in the same
All right.
one.
Yeah. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Okay. Now we are on general public comment. I don't think we have any general public here. All right. Making sure. Okay. So then we're moving on to board member comments. Anybody have anything?
Congrats to our student athletes. I think it's phenomenal. We had such a
Yeah.
big representation of them, and it's wonderful to hear that they've maintained academic success while doing this in a pandemic. So kudos to the coaches, the teachers, and the kids.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Here, here.
Agreed.
No, absolutely. I mean, and it was stressed, and I'll stress it again. Sports are important. Team sports are fantastic. You learn so many great skills. But it's still school, and to have the academics across the board, the academic recognition is just fantastic. So hearty congratulations. A lot of pride.
Yes. Absolutely. And I'll just, you got-
one thing.
yeah.
I just wanted to say, when I was catching up on some of the things from NISBA today and stuff, that there is out there, there's a proposed federal waiver for the state accountability
The ESSA.
requirements.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so there is a survey out there, so they're taking public comment right now on asking for a waiver for some of the ESSA requirements right now. So basically they're trying to get a waiver so that it's proposing not really, they want students, families, educators' feedback. Trying to determine for New York State the most appropriate timeline and manner for restarting the ESSA accountability. And the waiver request that they have right now is it calls for eliminating some of the accountability indicators that identify schools for improvement and things. So it's a lot of the high stakes stuff that's on test scores right now. And so that was sort of waived with the pandemic, because as we saw, like this testing last year, you couldn't really use that information. So they're collecting public feedback right now. So there is a link. So I could share that with any of you if you're interested in doing it. I did the little survey today. It's really easy. It's like 2 questions.
So is that, I
had
had forwarded to the board that same statement and suggested that as a board, we send a note to register our comments and thoughts. Is the preference then that individuals submit, or that we as a board, because if you remember last year, we also wrote a letter, right, to the regents, and we gave our thoughts. Is this something that everyone wants to send separately? Or is this in addition to?
I would tend to do it individually. I think it's a good thing. But
Yeah, they're collecting, I'm sorry, that had sort of slipped by. I know you had
Oh,
sent
no,
it.
no, no, I'm remembering as you're
until
saying.
December 15th, so it's a quick time frame, I think, for getting the information in. So it may be too late to send a letter right now, but there is the survey link. So as board members or parents, we can send that in.
Can we make that available to the community?
And we can make it available to the community. Maybe I can connect with Nancy and see if we can get it on the Facebook page or on the board page.
That'd be great.
Would that be
Thank
okay?
you.
Just since it is a chance for people to weigh in their thoughts. And they kind of explain what it is on that when you open that link too.
Yeah.
Okay. But that was the only thing I had just wanted to bring up.
Sounds good. I'll just take us out just kind of with the theme tonight. Again, I would say that absolutely the academic, the athletics prowess that everybody showed in the fall. Being at the games at the state championship, I know Stacy and I were at the boys soccer game and things like that, and we had some of us were up at the football game in Syracuse on Friday. The way that the athletes carried themselves, we should be very proud as a community. The respect that they played with, the intensity they played with, the respect for their players, their fellow players. I mean, it was great. I mean, yes, one team did win the state, the other team came in second. What you saw from both groups was very appropriate in that moment. I've seen people win games and be very, very inappropriate, and people get paid lots of money to play these games, and our students did not. And then I've seen folks lose very games and fall to pieces, and just really, really just not a good way of demonstrating how to be a high character and high moral. We did not see that in the Dome last Friday either. You should be very proud of your coaches, of your families, and the kids. We transported 5 full buses of children up there. And then plus we had about 400 of our students go up there last week. So again, to the participation there in the crowds and the stands and the cheering, so out on the field. Those are the soft skills that are part of all the things that hold us together. We should be very proud as a community. They did very well, both in victory and in loss. And so it was really a good thing to see for our community. So thank you.
Good. All right. So be it resolved that this regular meeting of the Board of Education be adjourned.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstained.